When you start hunting for a way to pull the nasty fumes away from a laser cutter or a little soldering station, the first thing you see online is a sea of cheap, thin-walled hoses that promise industrial strength for a few bucks. I've been there, bought one of those flimsy things, set it up, only to watch the plastic melt a little after a few weeks and the smoke still leaking into the room. That regret is why I spent a few evenings watching YouTube teardown videos, scrolling through forum threads, and even asking a couple of friends in a makerspace how they handle their exhaust. The question that kept coming up was simple: do you want a hose that will actually survive a day's work, or are you okay with a bargain that might give you a new replacement every month? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The 468-inch flexible insulated duct hose from this generic brand tries to position itself as the smart buy in that space. It's marketed as a plastic-insulated, 360-degree flexible tube that folds up for storage, comes with a detachable nozzle and collector hood, and claims to work with everything from laser engravers to welding rigs. The promise is attractive, but the real test is whether those claims hold up once you actually route it around a workbench, tighten it to a fan, and run it for a few hours a day. Let's start with who this hose is really for. If you run a dedicated laser engraving booth, you probably already have a permanent exhaust fan and a fixed duct line. In that scenario, a rigid metal pipe is often the go-to solution because it won't collapse under suction and it's easy to seal. This flexible hose would be overkill, and you'd end up paying for flexibility you never need. On the other hand, if you're a hobbyist who jumps between projects, a weekend metalworking hobbyist, a small electronics lab, or a makerspace that shares a single fume extractor among multiple stations, this is exactly the kind of component that can make your setup portable without a permanent installation. The first practical strength I noticed is the insulation. The hose is built with a layer of plastic that wraps around the inner conduit, which means the outer surface stays relatively cool even when you're pulling hot metal, cutting smoke through it. In a cramped workshop that shares a workbench with a power drill and a soldering iron, that insulation prevents the hose from becoming a burn hazard. I tried running it alongside a soldering iron that was set to 400 C, and after a solid 2-hour session the outer wall was still only warm to the touch. That's a real safety win you don't get with the ultra-thin PVC alternatives. Flexibility is the second selling point, and it's not just marketing fluff. The 360-degree bendability means you can snake the hose around a cluttered bench, under a table, or even loop it over a small stack of parts without kinking. In practice, I was able to pull the hose from a desktop laser engraver, around a set of tool cabinets, and into a ceiling-mounted extraction fan that sat 3 feet away. The hose kept its shape, didn't collapse, and didn't produce any audible flutter that can sometimes happen with cheaper, softer tubes when the airflow is high. The ability to fold it up flat when not in use also saves valuable bench space, a small but appreciated benefit in a hobbyist's garage. The detachable nozzle and collector hood are where the product tries to be modular. The nozzle slips onto the end of the hose and the hood snaps over the nozzle, creating a little funnel that can be positioned close to the source of fumes. In a soldering scenario, I placed the hood right over the joint, and it captured most of the flux smoke before it could drift upward. With a laser engraver, the hood sits a few inches above the work area, and while it doesn't create a perfect seal, you can't expect that from a plastic hood, it does concentrate the airflow enough that the fan pulls the majority of the particles out. The detachment mechanism is simple push-in tabs that lock with a click, so swapping out a nozzle for a longer piece when you need more reach is quick and doesn't require any tools. Now for the practical weaknesses. The hose comes in 3 diameters: 4, 6, and 8 inches, so you have to pick the size that matches both your fan's inlet and the volume of fumes you expect. The larger the diameter, the lower the airspeed for a given fan, which can reduce the effectiveness of particle capture if your fan isn't powerful enough. I paired the 6-inch version with a 120 CFM inline fan, which is pretty standard for a small shop. The result was decent, but I did notice a slight back pressure at the fan inlet after about an hour of continuous use. That's not a deal breaker, but it does mean you need to keep an eye on your fan's performance. A weaker fan will struggle more than the specs suggest. Another downside.